You know, I have been thinking a lot lately about something that genuinely bothers me, and it is the reason I am sitting down to write this entire long piece for you today. I was at the airport a few weeks ago, not even traveling myself, just picking up a friend who was coming in from overseas, and I watched a scene unfold at the security checkpoint that honestly made my blood run a little cold. A family, a mom and dad with two kids who looked to be about 8 and 10, were absolutely devastated. They had clearly saved up for this trip for what looked like a long time. They were dressed in those matching vacation shirts, you know the ones, with the palm trees and the family name on the back, and they were being told they could not board their flight. It was not because they were late. It was not because they didn't have tickets. It was because of something in their carry-on bag, something that I guarantee you they had probably packed 100 times before without a second thought. And as I stood there watching the mom's face crumple and the dad try to argue with an officer who had absolutely no power to change the rules, I kept thinking, how many of us actually know what we are doing when we pack our bags? How many of us are just guessing? And that brings me to the question I really want you to think about. And please, I mean this genuinely. I want you to stop for a second after you read this and ask yourself, and then share it in the comments if you feel comfortable. But when was the last time you packed for a flight and you were absolutely 100% certain that every single item in your bag was allowed? I am not talking about the obvious stuff, not the guns or the bombs or the things that are clearly illegal. I am talking about the gray area items, the things you carry every day, the souvenirs you pick up on vacation, the little gadgets and toiletries and comfort items you throw in at the last minute. When was the last time you were truly certain? I would bet for most of you, the honest answer is never. And that is exactly what the people in charge of our airports are counting on, not to trap you, but to keep you safe. And the line between safe and denied boarding in 2026 is thinner than you could ever imagine. So stick with me here, because I am going to walk you through this entire landscape, from the things you can toss in your bag without a worry, to the things that will absolutely get you pulled out of line and into a private room. And I promise you, by the time we are done here, you are going to look at your suitcase in a completely different way. And I am not just going to give you a dry list of rules. You can get that from the government website if you want to read 100 pages of legal jargon. I am going to tell you why the rules exist, how the officers are trained to think, what they see on their screens when your bag goes through the X-ray, and most importantly, where the common sense gaps are that trip people up every single day. Let us start with the stuff that seems to confuse people the most, the liquids. Everyone knows the 3-1-1 rule, right? You have heard it a million times. 3.4 ounces, 1 quart-size bag, 1 bag per person. It is practically a national mantra at this point. But here's the thing. People mess this up constantly, and not just tourists who have never flown before. I see business travelers doing it, people who fly every single week. They walk through security with a water bottle full of something, or a full-size tube of toothpaste tucked into the bottom of their backpack, and they act shocked when it gets pulled. The rule is not a suggestion, it is a hard limit, and it is based on chemistry and physics, not just bureaucratic whim. The concern with liquids is that they could be mixed into explosives, and the 3.4-ounce limit is considered the threshold below which it is very difficult to cause a catastrophic explosion on an aircraft. That is the science behind it. So when you try to bring a 20-ounce bottle of shampoo, you are not just breaking a minor rule. You are technically trying to bring enough precursor material onto a plane that could, in theory, be used to build a bomb. The officers know that. They are trained to see it that way, and they have no tolerance for it because they cannot read your mind and know that you just really like that specific brand of conditioner. But the liquids rule gets even trickier when you start talking about things that are not obviously liquid. I am talking about gels, pastes, aerosols, creamy foods, things like peanut butter, hummus, yogurt, even some types of cheese. If you can smear it, if it is viscous, if it has moisture content that is not solid, it is probably going to be treated like a liquid. I have seen people try to bring a jar of Nutella through security and argue with the officer that it is a food, not a liquid. The officer does not care about the semantic distinction. If it is over 3.4 ounces and it is not completely solid, it is not going through, and you have to abandon it or go back to the check-in counter and put it in your checked luggage, which, by the way, if you have already checked in and come through security, that ship has sailed. You are now stuck abandoning your expensive hazelnut spread to the donation bin or the trash can. That is a tough pill to swallow. Now let us talk about something that is going to surprise a lot of you. And this is one of those things that falls into the category of items that are technically allowed, but will almost certainly get you stopped, searched, questioned, and possibly missed your flight because of the time it takes to sort it out. I am talking about food items that look suspicious on the X-ray. Think about what a block of cheese looks like on a screen. It is dense, it is organic, it has a shape that is not obviously identifiable. To a TSA officer, that block of cheese looks a lot like a block of plastic explosive. It really does. The density is similar, the shape could be anything. So when they see that in your bag, they have to pull it, they have to swab it for explosive residue, they have to ask you questions about it. And if you are in a hurry, that 10-minute delay could be the difference between making your connection and sleeping in the airport. The same goes for things like fruitcakes that are dense and dark, or large chunks of chocolate, or even wrapped gifts that have irregular shapes. I personally never ever wrap gifts before I fly. I carry the gifts unwrapped and then wrap them when I get to my destination, because a wrapped box is a mystery box to the X-ray machine, and the TSA hates mysteries. They will open it. They will tear the wrapping paper. They will ruin your surprise. It is just not worth it. Now let us pivot to the things that are absolutely forbidden. The items that will get you in real trouble, not just a delayed flight, but potentially a fine or even criminal charges. And this is where I see the most dangerous misunderstandings happening in 2026. It is not just about weapons anymore, although weapons are obviously a huge part of it. It is about self-defense items. The world feels a little scarier than it used to, and a lot of people, especially women traveling alone, have taken to carrying personal protection items like pepper spray, stun guns, tactical pens, and even things like brass knuckles that are disguised as belt buckles or keychains. Here's the hard truth. Most of these items are illegal to carry on a plane. Pepper spray is a great example. In many states you can carry it legally, but the TSA has specific rules about it. You are allowed 1 canister of pepper spray in your checked baggage, as long as it is 4 fluid ounces or less, and it has a safety mechanism to prevent accidental discharge. But you cannot bring it in your carry-on. It is considered a hazardous material and a weapon. And if you forget you have it in your purse and you walk through the checkpoint, you are going to have a very bad day. They will call law enforcement. They will ask you a lot of questions about why you have it and what your intentions are. And you might miss your flight while they sort it out. I have seen it happen. Stun guns and tasers are even more serious. There is no version of bringing a stun gun through a security checkpoint that ends well for you. Even if it is in your checked bag, you have to declare it. And there are strict rules about how it must be packaged to prevent it from accidentally turning on and starting a fire in the cargo hold. But in your carry-on, absolutely not. They will find it and they will treat it as a weapon, because that is exactly what it is. And here's the thing, the TSA officers are not just looking for the device itself. They are trained to recognize the components. They know what a battery pack for a stun gun looks like. They know what the cartridges look like. So even if you think you have cleverly disassembled it and spread the parts through your bag, they are going to piece it together. They do this every single day. You are not going to outsmart them. Now let us talk about knives, because this is another area where people get tripped up by outdated information or wishful thinking. For a long time, there was a lot of confusion about whether small knives were allowed. At one point, the TSA actually announced they were going to allow small knives, and then they reversed that decision after pushback from flight attendants and law enforcement. As of now, the rule is pretty simple. No knives of any kind are allowed in your carry-on. It does not matter if the blade is less than 2 inches. It does not matter if it is a butter knife. It does not matter if it is a plastic knife with a serrated edge that could technically cut something. If it looks like a knife, if it functions like a knife, if it has a blade, it is not going through. I have seen people try to bring letter openers, cuticle cutters, multi-tools with a small blade, even those little keychain knives that are about the size of your thumbnail. They all get confiscated. And the worst part is, people get genuinely angry about it. They argue that it is not a weapon, that they use it for work, that it is expensive, that they have carried it 100 times before. None of that matters. The rule is the rule. And the officer on that line does not have the authority to make an exception for you, even if they wanted to, which most of them do not because they have heard every argument 1,000 times. Now let us move into the realm of electronics and batteries, because this is a rapidly changing area of security and one where the rules in 2026 have gotten significantly stricter than they were even a few years ago. Everyone knows you have to take your laptop out of your bag and put it in a separate bin. That has been standard for a long time, but now we are seeing more and more requirements about larger electronics, tablets, e-readers, portable DVD players, even some gaming systems. The issue is density. The X-ray machines need to see through these devices, and if they are stacked on top of each other or buried under clothing, the image is not clear enough, so you have to take them out. But the bigger issue, and the one that is actually causing people to be denied boarding in 2026, is batteries, specifically lithium batteries. These are the batteries that power almost everything we travel with: phones, laptops, cameras, portable chargers. They are incredibly energy dense, which is great for us because they last a long time, but they are also a significant fire risk. If a lithium battery is damaged, if it short circuits, if it overheats, it can go into what is called thermal runaway, which is basically a fire that burns extremely hot and is very difficult to put out. And on an airplane, that is a nightmare scenario. So the rules around batteries have tightened. You cannot put loose lithium batteries in your checked luggage. They have to be in your carry-on, and ideally, they should be in their original packaging or have the terminals taped over to prevent them from coming into contact with metal objects like keys or coins. And if you have a portable charger, a power bank, it has to be under a certain watt-hour rating. Most consumer power banks are fine, but if you have one of those massive ones that could jumpstart a truck, you might have a problem. I have seen people show up with these huge battery packs that look like car batteries, and the TSA just says no. It is too big, too risky. And then there is the issue of devices that have batteries that cannot be removed. Think about those smart luggage bags that have built-in chargers. A few years ago, those were all the rage. You could charge your phone from your suitcase. But then the airlines and the TSA realized that if the battery in that bag caught fire, you could not remove it. You would have a burning suitcase in the overhead bin with no way to put it out. So now, smart luggage is heavily restricted. If the battery is removable, you have to take it out and carry it separately. If the battery is not removable, you cannot bring that bag at all, not as carry-on, not as checked luggage. It is banned. And people show up with these expensive suitcases all the time, having spent hundreds of dollars on them, and they have to leave them at the airport or figure out how to ship them home. It is heartbreaking to watch. Now let us talk about something that is less about physical items and more about documentation and behavior, because honestly, in 2026, this is where the real landmines are. You can have the most perfectly packed bag in the world, with every liquid in a tiny bottle, and every battery taped up, and every knife left at home, and you can still be denied boarding. And that is because the rules are not just about what you bring, they are about who you are and how you present yourself. I am talking about the secure flight program, about the no-fly list, about the match between your ID and your boarding pass and your face. And I am also talking about something that is becoming a much bigger deal in the last couple of years, which is the consistency of your story. Let me explain what I mean by that. When you go through security, you are not just interacting with a machine, you are interacting with a person. And that person is trained to look for signs of deception, stress, or inconsistency. If you are nervous, if you are sweating, if you cannot look the officer in the eye, if your answers to their questions do not match up with what they see on your ID or your boarding pass, you are going to attract attention. And sometimes that attention leads to a secondary screening, which is fine. It happens to lots of people. But sometimes it leads to something more serious. If an officer suspects that you are not who you say you are, or that you are traveling under duress, or that you are carrying something for someone else without knowing what it is, they have the authority to hold you and call in law enforcement. And that can absolutely cause you to miss your flight. I remember reading about a case a few months ago. A woman was traveling with her boyfriend, and she was carrying his laptop in her bag because his bag was full. He asked her to put it in her backpack. She did not think anything of it. She went through security, and the laptop was flagged for some reason. Maybe it would not power on. Maybe there was something on the X-ray that looked odd. They started asking her questions. Whose laptop is this? She said it was her boyfriend's. They asked her to unlock it. She did not know the password. They asked her to show them something on the laptop that proved it belonged to her boyfriend. She could not. They asked her boyfriend, who was already through security on the other side, to come back. He could not, because once you are through, you cannot go back without rescreening. It turned into this whole mess. They missed their flight. They spent hours being questioned. And in the end, it was nothing. Just a laptop with a dead battery and a couple who did not realize that carrying someone else's electronics is a massive red flag. The officers have to assume that maybe she stole it. Maybe she is being coerced into transporting something illegal. Maybe she is lying about who she is. They have to investigate. It is their job. And that brings me to a point I really want to hammer home. The TSA is not the police. They are not there to arrest you. They are there to prevent threats from getting on airplanes. But they have a lot of power within that specific mission. They can search your bags. They can pat you down. They can ask you invasive questions. And if you refuse to cooperate, they can bar you from entering the secure area of the airport. That is their authority. And in 2026, with all the new technology and all the heightened awareness, they are using that authority more aggressively than ever. Let us talk about some of that new technology because it is changing the game in ways that most travelers do not even realize. You have probably seen the new body scanners, the ones that look like glass cylinders or the ones that use millimeter wave technology. Those machines are incredibly sophisticated. They do not just see through your clothes to look for metal. They create a generic outline of a person and highlight any areas where something is hidden. And the officer looking at the screen does not see your body. They see a cartoon avatar with boxes drawn on it. That is meant to protect your privacy. But the sensitivity of these machines is amazing. They can detect things like a piece of paper in your pocket, a folded napkin, a sweat stain that is thicker than the surrounding fabric. They can detect if you have something taped to your body or hidden in a body cavity. And if the machine flags an area, you are getting a pat-down. There is no arguing with the machine. The officer has to follow the protocol. And then there are the explosive trace detection swabs. You have probably seen these too. They take a little cotton swab and wipe it on your hands or on the outside of your bag or on an item inside your bag. And then they put it into a machine that analyzes it for particles of explosive material. These machines are incredibly sensitive. They can detect microscopic amounts of residue. And here's the scary part for a lot of innocent travelers. You can test positive for explosives without ever having touched a bomb in your life. How? Because explosive residue is everywhere. If you have ever been to a shooting range, if you have ever handled fireworks, if you have ever been in a car that used certain types of airbag deployment systems, if you have ever been in a military vehicle or near someone who was handling explosives, the particles can transfer to your skin and your clothing and stay there for days or even weeks. I have heard stories of hunters testing positive because of gunpowder residue on their jackets from a hunting trip months ago. I have heard of construction workers testing positive because they handle certain types of industrial tools that use explosive charges. And if you test positive, you are not automatically in trouble. They will ask you questions. They might search your bags more thoroughly. They might call a supervisor. But it is a delay, and it is stressful, and it can absolutely cause you to miss your flight if it happens close to boarding time. Now let us talk about the things that are not physical items at all, but are just as important, your documents. In 2026, the Real ID Act is fully in effect, or at least it should be, depending on how many extensions have been granted. If you are still carrying an old driver's license that does not have the star in the corner indicating it is Real ID compliant, you might not be able to board a domestic flight. You will need a passport or another accepted form of ID. And people forget this all the time. They show up with their regular license, the officer scans it, the system says invalid for federal purposes, and suddenly they are in a panic. Sometimes you can get through with extra screening, but it is not guaranteed. And if you are flying internationally, you need that passport, and it needs to be valid for at least 6 months beyond your travel dates in most cases. I have seen people get to the gate, ready to board an international flight, and get denied because their passport expires in 5 months. The airline will not let them board because the destination country will not let them in. It is devastating. And then there are visas. If you are a non-US citizen, you need to have the correct visa or ETA authorization for your travel. And you would be surprised how many people try to travel on the wrong visa or on a visa that is about to expire, or on an ETA that was revoked because they overstayed a previous visit. The airlines check this before you even get to the gate. They have systems that verify your documents against international databases. If something does not match, you are not getting a boarding pass, and you cannot argue with the computer. It is a hard stop. Now, I want to talk about behavior, because this is the wild card. You can have everything in order, the perfect bag, the perfect ID, the perfect visa, and you can still be denied boarding because of how you act. And I am not talking about being rude to the gate agent, although that certainly does not help. I am talking about behavior that raises security flags. If you are wandering around the terminal looking lost and nervous, if you are taking pictures of security checkpoints or military personnel, if you are asking a lot of questions about how the scanners work or where the cockpit is, someone is going to notice, and they might report you, and then law enforcement might come and talk to you. And if they decide you are acting suspiciously, they can detain you for questioning, and you will miss your flight. I know that sounds harsh, and it sounds like I am telling you to be paranoid, but I am not. I am telling you to be aware. Airports are high-security environments. They are not like shopping malls. The people working there are trained to look for anomalies. If you are an anomaly, you will get attention. So be calm, be confident, know where you are going, keep your phone in your pocket, and do not make jokes about bombs or terrorism. That is the fastest way to get yourself arrested. People think it is funny to say things like, "I hope they don't find the bomb in my bag, haha." The officers do not think it is funny. They will take you seriously. They will pull you aside. They will question you. And you might spend the night in a holding cell while they figure out if you are a real threat or just an idiot with a bad sense of humor. It happens more often than you think. Let us talk about medical items, because this is an area where people with legitimate needs often get tripped up by rules that seem unfair but have a logical basis. If you have medications, especially liquid medications, they are exempt from the 311 rule. You can bring larger quantities, but you have to declare them. You have to take them out of your bag and tell the officer that you have medically necessary liquids, and they might test them. They might swab the outside of the bottle. They might ask you why you need them. You do not have to show them a prescription for over-the-counter stuff, but if it is a controlled substance, you better have it in the original bottle with your name on it. I have seen people try to bring loose pills in a Ziploc bag, and that is a huge red flag. They look like illegal drugs, because that is exactly how illegal drugs are often transported. So keep your pills in the prescription bottles. It is just common sense. And then there are medical devices like CPAP machines, insulin pumps, syringes. All of these are allowed, but they will be inspected. The syringes, for example, have to be accompanied by the medication they are meant to inject. You cannot just have a bunch of syringes with nothing else. That looks like drug paraphernalia. And if you have a device that has a battery, like a CPAP, you have to take it out and put it through the X-ray separately. And you need to know the rules about batteries for those devices, because they often have large lithium batteries that need to be transported in a certain way. Now let us talk about money. This is a weird one, but it comes up more often than you would think. There is no limit to how much cash you can bring on a domestic flight. You can carry $1 million in a suitcase if you want to, although I would not recommend it for safety reasons. But if you are traveling internationally, you have to declare if you are carrying more than $10,000 in cash or monetary instruments. That is a federal law. And if you do not declare it and they find it, they can seize it. They can take your money and you will have to fight to get it back. And people try to hide it all the time. They put it in their socks, in their shoes, in their underwear, in hollowed-out books. And the officers are trained to find it. They see it every day. They know all the tricks. So do not try to hide cash. Just declare it. It is not illegal to have money. It is illegal to not report it. And while we are on the subject of things that get people in trouble, let us talk about souvenirs. You go on vacation, you have a great time, you buy some local crafts, and you throw them in your suitcase without a second thought. And then at the airport, you get stopped because that beautiful wooden carving you bought from a street vendor is made from a protected species of wood. Or that lovely seashell necklace contains an endangered type of shell. Or that colorful powder you bought at a market is actually a controlled substance in the United States. I have seen people bring back things like kratom, which is legal in some countries but not in others, and they get flagged for drug importation. I have seen people bring back food products like sausages or cheeses that are prohibited because of agricultural restrictions. The customs officers at the international arrivals area are not messing around. They have dogs that sniff for agricultural products. They have X-rays that can see inside your bag. If you bring something illegal, even by accident, you can be fined hundreds or even thousands of dollars, and you can be denied entry or have your items confiscated. So what does all of this mean for you, the traveler, in 2026? It means you have to be more prepared than ever. It means you cannot just throw things in a bag and hope for the best. You have to think about every single item. You have to ask yourself, what is this? What is it made of? Could it be mistaken for something else? Is it allowed in my carry-on? Or does it need to be checked? Is it legal in the place I am going? Is it legal in the place I am leaving? Do I have the right documents for it? And you have to do this weeks before you travel, not at the airport.